I recently inherited this blank when I bought an old lathe from a deceased estate. I wanted to make another pot for my fake clay pot series, and this seemed like the perfect blank for the form I wanted to create. My only reservation was that the blank was cypress, and I've worked this wood before and found it very prone to cracking. In this regard, my fears proved justified, as you can see that despite the blank being properly waxed, it already had a decent sized split in the base. Because I wanted to use the entire blank for the form, I glued a small foot onto the base to hold the form while I worked it. The foot was securely glued and tightly clamped and left for a few days to dry. I mounted the blank on a faceplate, drew up the foot and took a little weight off the bottom corners of the piece. True to form, another large crack was revealed in the process. Because the form was going to have a narrow neck, I couldn't really complete the base with the piece mounted on my faceplate, so I turned a groove or mortise in order to mount the blank using my chuck. With the blank mounted on the chuck, I can complete most of the base. I can refine the form using my skew chisel as a negative rake scraper. When the base shape is complete, I reverse the pot again and refine the rim and the opening. I cut some raised beads on the top surface with a sharp square-edged scraper, making sure to continue the line of the form through the beads. The opening is undercut with a small scraper made from an old chisel. The hollowing is the most difficult part of the job. I start by drilling a depth hole with a spade bit to remove as much timber as possible. You can see the depth mark on the end near the chuck. The lathe is on very low revs and the drill does most of the cutting. Then I cut a small rim with a scraper to give the gouge a lip to sit in, otherwise it can get out of control right on the edge. Then I get as much out with the gouge as I can. At this point I use this scraper to do most of the rest of the hollowing, but I deliberately don't have much video of the process, as it's a lot of concentration and one small mistake can blow the whole thing up. Suffice to say, it's a lot of small stages and a lot of measuring with the calipers. The final thickness is around 7 to 8 millimeters. Then I do a bit of coarse sanding and cut the insert beads between the raised beads around the opening. Next, I spend some time marking out the carving, and then start with the V-gouge to do the texture on the outside. The clay potters obviously do this with a comb type of device and sweep it up and down the perimeter of the pot. It's much slower to carve it in like this. Once again, the cypress proved difficult to work, as despite my carving gouge being razor sharp, it would raise the grain and pull out divots in some areas where the run of the grain was not cooperating. I tried a few ways to get round this, but ended up having to live with it. I think it sort of adds to the clay-like feel of the piece, which is what I was going for anyway. The little divots around the rim were pretty straightforward. I just eyeballed the spacing for these. Next came the painting. I start with the base colours that I want to show through when the top coats are sanded, so the first coat is a light grey. Then some watery black to fill in the grooves of the carving and a top coat of clay colour. This is all roughly sanded back to reveal the base colours and some of the timber showing through. Then I reverse mount the pot and turn off the foot that was glued on earlier, and paint and finish the bottom. Then lastly a quick coat of shellac to seal the piece. Here's the finished product.